Hi, I'm Zach Bishop, and today I want to be talking to you about a similar topic to my Information 2 speech, but specifically this time I want to talk about how the NBA could have handled their issue with viewership. So let's get into the background and some of the issues right now. So first and foremost, the NBA had to cancel the season about mid-March, which usually the season ends in July, but due to this unseen circumstances, they had to end their season in October in a bubble-type environment. Now, the bubble is basically a big hotel in which the NBA players played all their games, lived at for about 4 months at max, and they weren't allowed to leave, weren't allowed to have anybody come in, and it's actually a very interesting feat. They had no positive test given the circumstances, which is crazy considering the state of sports right now. But due to this bubble type environment and the kind of weird schedule of the NBA, they had a vast drop in viewership in the playoffs. So right here, I have a little graph from Forbes. We see TNT, which is usually where the NBA Finals is hosted, drops about 26%, and ESPN, which is usually where the playoffs drops about 6%. Now, you'd think that with the NBA being canceled for solid 3 months, along with the whole entire entertainment industry, which we'll get into later, why is there such a drop in viewership and people are so fiending for live action sports and live action entertainment? So a lot of this is kind of, like I said before, unforeseen circumstances and not much the NBA could control. But I do think the NBA could have done a better job of handling these circumstances. And I think that these are things that the NBA should do and should have done coming the new season starting in December. So let's get into the first issue, the coronavirus. Now, obviously, the NBA has no control of the coronavirus. It is a national pandemic that has killed a lot of people, and this has nothing to do with the NBA's fault. However, the coronavirus did infect the NBA schedule, which I do think the NBA could have done a better job of affecting. So essentially, the coronavirus is they're allowed to play in these games as long as they can keep themselves as socially distanced as possible. So I think the NBA needs to do a great job of emphasizing the fact that these players need to stay as socially distanced as possible from the outside world. Right now, we see players like James Harden and Ben Simmons going out and about to nightclubs and whatnot, just doing things where the pandemic wouldn't be happening, but that is not the case. In which there's a season that they're supposed to be starting in about middle of December, around Christmas time, and the league needs to do a great job of emphasizing to players that this is not only our money on the line, but it's your money. And if you're going to be going out and about doing stuff and putting the league at risk, then there's no way this is going to happen in a safe environment. We see that right now with all these other sports leagues. We see the MLB, NFL, NCAA football, NCAA basketball have all these random cancellations because people are traveling around all over the place. And the coronavirus it's such a tough thing to handle. The only way you can do a great job of making sure that these games are on schedule and on time so fans know when they are is to be sure that the players know that they need to keep their health priority. And the second issue is more of a political issue. It's the Black Lives Matter movement. And the Black Lives Matter movement is a very hot topic which took place in about the month of June to July. But the NBA took a very political approach to this and backed their players. There's an article called After Our Test in which discusses how black the league is, in which it's a very African-American oriented league, and there's nothing wrong with that, but the league did take a very vast approach in supporting their employees, which I commend, but however, there are two sides to every argument. There's an article from a professor called Rankin in which he compared the Black Lives Matter movement to the LA riots, in which there are always two sides to every argument, and there are some people that do believe that these riots and this protest was just bad. And even the President of the United States, they didn't necessarily agree with this and had little argument spats with NBA players over Twitter and whatnot. So I think that the league needs to do a better job of just keeping in mind that there are two sides to every argument, regardless of how they feel. So they did this thing during the season. They put little messages on the back of players' jerseys in which they were allowed to say little quotes or sayings in which expressed how they felt, basically. So on the back, instead of saying the James and LeBron James's name and back name, you'd see equality, which I thought did a great job of kind of giving the players a peaceful voice and showing how they felt and what the unrest in which they were wanting. So after the Black Lives Matter movement, I do think the NBA does need to do a better job of just keeping in mind that there are two sides to every argument, and regardless of how they feel and how their employees feel, there are millions of other people in the league, in the world, who do watch this and might take it as a negative. So I do think the league needs to do a better job of that next. So in the future, the next argument I want to bring up is the NFL competition, the overall scheduling of the league. So there's a study done by a professor in which he discussed the estimated of viewers when their at-home behavior is disrupted and how that affects their TV behavior, in which the NBA is a perfect example of that. The league is put on in a different time, which NFL competition alone is enough, but with this weird study going on at the same time, it shows that there's going to be a drop in viewership and a drop in your typical normal behavior. The average NBA fan is not going to be wanting to tune into games in October when the NFL is going on, compared to the fiending fan who is wanting to watch it, in which there's a majority of average fans like that. So I think the NBA needs to do a better job of scheduling around certain other competition. Scheduling the NBA Finals around the football season is just not a good idea. Football owns a whole day in Sunday, most of the day in Monday and Thursday, in which it's unreasonable and not reasonable. It's unreasonable to expect the NBA to be able to compete to the same level in which they could when the NFL. So I think the NBA needs to schedule the season around the months of September, October, and November. Specifically, maybe starting in August and ending in May or June, or starting in October, December, and scheduling later on in June and July. These months are the kind of the money months in which the NBA will be able to maximize their profits and overall viewership. So in conclusion, there's not a lot the NBA could have really done. A lot of this is unforeseen circumstances in which there's no other way to really handle these situations besides, reacting to them the best way possible. And I think the NBA definitely could have done a better job of reacting to it. Now, if you look back at stuff in the past, there's always things you could have done differently. But with this new NBA season coming up, I do think the NBA does need to emphasize the fact that the players need to stay socially distanced. They need to keep a more level-headed approach towards the political spectrum of the world, as well as the scheduling conflict, which I do think they're going to be doing a good job of doing that. And I do think that if they do all these things, then their viewership will go back up and the league will be back to the hot spot that they are. Thank you for listening.